This week on the 414 Live, we'll be looking into how emotions play a part in the process which B2B decision makers go through in making a purchase decision. I'll be speaking with Nick Hague, who surveyed 2,000 business decision makers to understand in detail how these people make buying decisions for their organisation. Nick will be sharing his findings which reveal the factors which help or hurt a supplier's chances of winning business. Ultimately, his research will be of major interest if you are keen to help improve your company's abilities to attract new clients. Yes, good morning. My name's James Rostance and this is the 414 Live here on LinkedIn Live each and every Thursday morning at 11:30. So if you have not joined us before, the 414 is for you as a professional B2B marketer, for you to expand and enhance your professional knowledge each and every week. And the way that we do that is by interviewing some of the greatest and most interesting minds in B2B marketing right now. So one of the topics that is really strong and popular at the moment is the concept that buying with emotion is very much a major factor when it comes to making B2B purchase decision-making processes. And a gentleman called Nick Hague has undertaken some fantastic research to look into this subject in more detail. And I thought it would be a really good thing to get him on the show and to share about this research that he's undertaken so that you can learn all of the wonderful things which he's uncovered, which ultimately go to making sure that a potential customers end up choosing you and your company. So to help with that and to look into this research in more detail, please welcome live from Manchester, Mr. Nick Hague.
Hi there, James. Good to be with you this morning.
Good to have you on the show, Nick. Thank you for joining me.
Pleasure.
Nick, so with the report, could you start by just explaining how and why is it that you came to doing this research?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, understanding the B2B buyer mindset is core to B2B marketing. And last year we joined Denso Aegis Network as a group, and our sister company Gyro had previously carried out some research looking at emotions. They called it the Business Feelings Index. But it was very qualitative in a sense, very interesting, but we wanted to take it one step further and put some robustness, some statistical validity behind it to understand which are those key emotions that are really driving business decision makers, and also how can we interact along the different touch points of a buyer journey in making sure that we or the people out there are the chosen supplier in the end.
So the overarching theme of the report is that emotional factors have a much bigger impact than rational factors in a B2B decision-making process. Could you then just expand on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think sometimes we think in business decision-making, that it's all rational, but I suppose when you sit back and think about it, it does make sense that emotions, we don't leave our emotions at home, and in our consumer lives we make decisions. We're sometimes more emotive. But yeah, what we've seen within our research at least is that, in business decision making, there's multiple decision makers in that decision making unit. And actually the advent of the internet and the digital age that we're in, this elongated buying journey. What was very interesting is that we saw that between 50 and 60% of business decision makers don't even interact with a person until they've gone that far along the buying journey, looking at websites, doing their own research. So having multiple different people to speak to, having a lot longer decision-making decision-making process, we can drive emotions along that chain and make it more emotive.
So, with them longer buying cycles for B2B companies, what is it that you found that companies can do to become first more visible, but also then end up as part of a consideration set?
Yeah, well, we did see it was a journey. And at the beginning, it might be different people that are actually doing the research on which suppliers are out there, as opposed to, at the very end where it might be the C-suite who are signing off a big check on who to do business with. But at the very front end, to get into that consideration set, of course, we've got to be omnipresent. So, the omni-channel side of things. So not surprising, that Google search and then a company's website, 35% of decision makers said that influenced their decision to put a supplier into the consideration set. But I think what was interesting is we shouldn't forget the old tried and tested forms of marketing within B2B. So, for example, 35% said the website, but 31% said conferences and seminars. So still that face-to-face interaction in a B2B sense. And, we tested all different types of marketing mediums. So, we've got online. Social channels, that's quite interesting. 20% said, social media influenced them. So, and I can only assume, that that's going to grow in importance as well. So that's very interesting. But again, direct mail, hard copy direct mail shouldn't be forgotten. That was close behind social media at 19%. So I think what we do as marketeers, we need to, pull lots of different levers in order to push our message across and make sure we stand out from the crowd, or at least get into that consideration set.
That part does surprise me, actually, that direct mail is making as much of an impact, 2%? Direct mail is making as much of an impact as social media is then on the decision-making process in B2B. I'm surprised.
Yeah, it was an interesting takeaway from us. I mean, I think, too often we're bombarded, I suppose, digitally, and so something landing on your desk can actually cut through that noise. So it's definitely something for marketers to take away.
Yes, and I like it when things like that do become. You find things out like that because the old school stuff of direct mails, yes, it does seem to be coming back for a resurgence. So that was nice. Yeah. So I should put it to the audience right now. If you have a question that you would like to put to Nick to ask live on the show, please do put that in the comments section in the LinkedIn box right now. So put a question to LinkedIn, anything about the research or anything you'd like to know that Nick Albinwell can answer. Put it in the comments section now, and I will put that to him shortly. So your research also says right here that 56% of the final decision-making process is based on emotional factors. So what are the emotions that are at play?
Yeah, well, we saw 7 key emotions coming out from this study. 4 that were very much dominant and they were very much positive, and 3 that had a negative influence on the decision making. I mean, I must say that some of the rational decision making had already taken place, because when we got down to the final 2, that's when we saw these emotions kicking in, and that's where 56% of the buying decision is based on emotions, because they've got to tick all the boxes of the right product at the right price, the right availability, to even get into that final 2 consideration set. But yeah, the 4 key positive emotions were trust, confidence, optimism, and pride, in that order in terms of the influence that they had on business decision makers.
So what then can companies do to build trust and confidence? Was the first 2, right? What can they do to build trust and confidence?
Well, I suppose trust and confidence I see as aligned around the company itself, the company and the brand. So, for example, trust. When people were talking about trust, it was all about reliability. Will they meet my expectations? Will they do what they say they'll promise? And so having the resources, whether it's to do with the team on the ground in the particular geography that we're speaking to, whether they've got that expertise. And also, I think an interesting takeaway is that, sometimes when people get down to the final 2 suppliers they're choosing, one is already an incumbent, it's someone that they're using, so that previous customer experience builds into that trust. Confidence is slightly different, and confidence is, people were talking very much around the brand itself. And I suppose that old adage of you'll never get fired for buying or specifying IBM fits into that. And so having that strong brand, building that strong brand out there in the marketplace is so important. And obviously confidence feeds into trust as well, but they are slightly different when people are talking about those emotions.
And with regard to optimism and pride, that's surely a harder one to work on developing. How can businesses work to develop that?
Yeah, I see optimism and pride talking very much to the personal aspects of the decision maker, the person that's making that decision. So especially around optimism, then it's around understanding of that business need, being able to, the business issues and being able to, meet those. And I think an interesting piece from the research was the importance of thought leadership, especially in that front end piece. In fact, 40% of decision makers in enterprise, larger organizations, said that thought leadership was their biggest influence, which was very interesting to us. So that very much feeds into the optimism. They're the thought leader in their sector, and they can deliver something over and above what maybe others can't. And I think then slightly different to that, it was the lesser emotion of the positive, but it nonetheless still important, was pride. And I think, individually, these people are making decisions and they could be signing big checks for big amounts of money. And so the client wants to look good. So they want to go with a supplier that, obviously can deliver the job and tick all those boxes, but make them look good and deliver on the promises.
Key. I guess I'm linking to these emotions then. I wanted to also ask, did your research give you any indication for what companies can do to stand out from the crowd and with that help nurture these emotions that you're talking about?
Yeah, well, I think standing out from the crowd, I suppose going back to it, that thought leadership that I just mentioned, that was, if you're going to position yourself as a thought leader in your field, then you're definitely going to stand out from the crowd there. But I think being able to grab that point of differentiation and value sell a service or a solution as opposed to just a product. But I think also that the key was that this complex DMU, decision-making unit, that companies are trying to sell to, then, in smaller companies, yes, it was around, average 2 or 3 people that were influencing that decision, whereas in bigger companies, 6 or 7 in a lot of cases. And therefore, making sure that in order to stand out, you need to have mixed messages to different people in that decision-making unit, because each one does have an influence, even if they're, not the final decision maker.
I would like to go now to a question we've got from Kevin Anderson. He asks, he'll check out the full survey, but he's interested to know where case studies.
You can check it out online.
Let me start again. So Kevin Anderson asks, where do case studies, client stories, and testimonials fall into the consideration process?
I think they're really powerful, because that storytelling, that brings it to life. So it was further down the list in terms of considerations, but if we start to have a look at the correlation of what's really impacting the decision, that's when these case studies showing what you can do in a particular vertical or what you've done for a particular client, that again feeds into that trust and that confidence of this company know my sector, they know what the challenges are, and they can deliver against that. So vitally important.
Now, what would be your recommendations, based on everything you've discovered in the report, for marketers to use this body of knowledge and help drive the business forward? What should be their starting points?
I suppose, first of all, we started off with this hypothesis of is it the head or the heart in terms of how business decisions are made, and the answer is both, of course. So I think being able to, first of all, pull on those marketing levers, make sure that you're visible, building that strong brand is vitally important. But then understanding that omni-channel side, and again, going back to some of those points I made earlier, you know, okay, website, social media, all these digital platforms is so important, but being able to be targeted with a rifle through direct mail, through conferencing, to start to build the story, and the fact that, you know, you do need to speak to multiple people, and at each point they will have different challenges or needs. So being able to listen and being able to directly target to that, and I think, you know, that plays very much to the very much always on an ABM side of how companies are looking to win in business these days.
Beautiful. And Nick, well, we of course need to let people know, how can people get hold of this report? What's the easiest way of seeing this in more detail?
Yeah, well, it's digital and it is hard copy as well. The easiest place is to go to our website, which is b2binternational.com, and on the top line go to Thought Leadership, and from there you'll see a drop down and you'll be able to click on. It's called The State of B2B, but the title is Winning with Emotion, because that was the theme for the most recent survey.
Perfect. Nick, thank you ever so much for joining me today. This has been very much on point and in line with a lot of what all the other experts are saying. So thank you very much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me, James.
It's a pleasure. Right, and if you've enjoyed watching, then please do subscribe to the 414 podcast or visit the website, the414.net, for all subscription options, previous episodes, as well as finding out how you might like to be a guest on the show if you have some value to share. In the meantime, I'm James Rostance. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you here same time next week.